3 steps to overcome overthinking and rumination in OCD. These are steps that I really wish I'd known many years ago when I really found myself in the trap of OCD all the time. I used to spend pretty much 90% of my waking days overthinking, overanalyzing, trying to have a certainty all the time about my particular obsessions. And it was so draining. Our brains literally use up 20% of all of our energy. But if you're ruminating all the time, if you're overthinking things, then it's going to end up using even more. And of course, that's going to really, really drain you. So learning how to manage rumination and to kind of let go of that really difficult compulsion is so important. So tip number 1 is really to remember that you can redirect your attention to the present moment. The way in which I like to think about this is this. If you imagine a stage, the stage is really where all of your values are, all of the things in your life that you really care about, or often, it might just be what's going on in front of you in that particular moment. To make it more practical, let's kind of think about it in that way, because sometimes when people talk about values, it can get a bit confusing. You can kind of think, well, right now I'm at work or I'm here doing something, but there isn't anything that I particularly really value or I really care about in this moment. For me to refocus onto. So, what can I refocus on? Well, the important thing is really to think about it like whatever's right in front of you in that moment, whatever's pressing, whatever needs to be done. That's the thing that you want to refocus onto. That is your stage in that moment. And on that stage is a kind of spotlight. The spotlight is illuminating the thing that you should be paying attention to. Unfortunately, what tends to happen with OCD is it feels like somebody steals the spotlight from us and it goes completely off the stage and it starts illuminating a brick in the wall, which is obviously a metaphor for our fear, for uncertainty, for the things that we don't like in our lives. And what we need to do when this inevitably happens, as it will, is to bring acceptance and compassion to that as best that we can, and to try to bring that spotlight back to the present moment, back to the stage, whatever is in front of you in that moment and whatever you want to try to pay attention to. Now, you won't be perfect at doing this. It can be a bit clunky. It can be a bit clumsy at first. But as you keep practicing that skill of bringing your attention back, you're developing a much more resilient, strong and accepting mindset. And over time, you can learn to allow your fears to be there and to focus your attention much more on what really matters to you. And obviously, that really helps with managing rumination. And if you are struggling with OCD and anxiety, I do now have a 12-week program to help you to break free. It's based upon my own personal experiences of dealing with OCD and anxiety for far too long, as well as now having helped hundreds of people to break free. If you're interested in applying for that, you can by heading over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. There's a link in the show notes. Tip number 2 is really learning, that when we're ruminating, what is a good reason for that? Really, what's happening is you're experiencing anxiety, discomfort in the body. Maybe you're feeling sick in the stomach. Maybe there's some shame or some anxiety or something very uncomfortable, a sense of humiliation even. It really depends on what the particular theme might be that you're struggling with, what the thoughts are like, what your emotions are like on that particular day. And so often what we're trying to do is we're simply trying to distract ourselves from that stuff. We don't want to feel it. We don't want to allow it. We don't want for it to be there even at all, even just a little bit. We just want it gone and we want to feel good. And this is a huge part of the problem. What we end up doing with compulsions is effectively numbing the difficult emotions. What we need to try to learn to do, even just little by little, actually, ideally what you want to do is to do it little by little, because you want to learn to lean into that discomfort. You don't necessarily want to throw yourself into the deep end though, because that can be very hard to do that. And you don't know if you're going to be able to cope with that So you want to push yourself gently, but you want to learn how to feel a bit more of your anxiety, to experience it a little bit more, to learn how to sit with it, to go into it, to experience where it is in your body, how it presents itself, what happens when you pay attention to it. Does it change? Does it move? Does the intensity go up or down? Just by learning to lean in a bit more and to be a bit more curious about anxiety and other difficult emotions, really what we're doing is we're learning to change our relationship with them. And this is a huge part of learning to let them go. And, when we learn to let go of those difficult emotions, well, often the urge to ruminate begins to come down as well. Another really important tip for rumination is learning to be more compassionate with yourself. Now, a lot of people don't like the idea of being self-compassionate because I think we feel that if we start being, too indulgent with ourselves, that, we'll stop being successful in our lives. We'll give in too easily, or, we won't kind of do things in the way we've done them in the past that have enabled us to be, successful in some way. My counter to that is actually when we're truly more compassionate with ourselves, I think we end up being more successful in whatever we're doing. When we are not being compassionate, really what we're doing is we're judging ourselves. There's this kind of inner voice that's constantly talking, giving us a really hard time, telling us, hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? You haven't done this. You should do this. You should do that. There's often imperatives in there, should, must, have to. That's often how you can begin to tell that you're in role as the inner critic. And it really is a kind of role that we play. There's this internal judge, that's constantly telling us that things are not good enough. When we learn to recognize that inner critic and actually to begin to let go of it, to kind of reflect each day on the things that we're doing well, to point out to ourselves in each and every time, that we've actually managed to walk away from a rumination and we've come back to the present. Maybe we've practiced that skill of refocusing on the stage or what is in front of us that I talked about in tip 1. Every time that you do something like that, you want to start getting a habit of pointing that out to yourself, journaling about it. This kind of thing can really help with building this kind of self-compassion, as well as obviously being a bit more kind to yourself. If you do make a mistake, if things are imperfect sometimes, it doesn't mean that you've gone back to square one. It doesn't mean that, you've completely messed up. It just means that you've made a mistake, or, there's been a bit of a setback. If you can be kinder to yourself with those things and just tell yourself, look, it's okay that I didn't do that perfectly, or that this happened today. I'm just going to do my best to get back on with it. When we bring that kind of approach to challenges and problems, it really helps us to deal with them much more effectively, rather than the alternative, which is obviously just to start beating yourself up and, giving yourself a really hard time, telling yourself this isn't good enough. It typically just tends to make things worse. So many thanks, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed that one. Remember, if you're interested in my program, you can apply to do that by doing a free discovery call with me. You can head over to my website, robertjamescoaching.com. There's a link in the show notes. I really hope that you enjoyed this one. If you have any questions at all, do please let me know, and I will see you next time. This video is for education only. It's not therapy or medical advice. If you're struggling, please speak with a licensed mental health professional.